Ever since the biggest arc in the East Blue Saga, the Arlong Park arc, Oda has made us notice the opponents of the top three as very significant, and top threes in general as a whole, for one reason: the monster trio, compiling of Luffy, Zoro, and Jinbei. Yeah, I'm just joking. Sanji. Look at the major arc when it comes to Crocodile, Mr. 1 and Mr. 2, or Lucci, Kaku, and Jabra, or even moments of Sanji and Zoro both wanted to sacrifice himself for Luffy, to them struggling to fight a pacifista altogether in the Sabaody arc. This is just pre-time skip. If you go to post-time skip, they're together, low diffing, of course, pacifistas. Of course, Oda gave these three characters Observation and Armin Haki before any Straw Hat, and it gets pretty much deeper during the Wano arc when you realize it's the first New World arc where it returns to the big three format where Kaido, King, and Queen. But recently, in a surprising twist of Egghead Island, Gear 5th Luffy is side by side with Sanji, and the first time he's teamed up with anybody, it's Blackleg Sanji, his cook that he saved during Whole Cake Island. As Kizaru and Saturn face them, with even Sanji even blocking an Admiral's attack. You have to understand, that's a crazy feat, because Kizaru was shocked that even Sanji was able to do this. So it just shows you how powerful Sanji is. It kind of reminded me of Marco doing it during Marineford War, but if you are keeping it real, it's kind of more impressive by Sanji doing this than Marco, because Marco's a mythical zone one who can regenerate. So that's why I want to give respect to Sanji for this feat. Oh yeah, and I forgot to say, Zoro's still fighting Rob Lucci, which fans are in uproar over, which I do not know why, because Rob Lucci is the man that pretty much pre-time skip made Luffy had to use Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd for the first time just to barely defeat him. Like, Usopp had to do pretty much a friendship speech for Luffy to get back up. He pretty much willpower his way with that jet gatling and destroy Lucci. That's how much it took pre-time skip, and now Lucci came back post-time skip with Haki and Awakening. Like, you have to understand, Rob Lucci is a phenom, so Zoro not defeating him and low diffing him is not a surprise to me. For goodness sake, Rob Lucci was able to fight Gear 5th. So today's video, I analyzed the monster trio how Eiichiro Oda intended. Now, I want to start off with Dressrosa, and the reason why I want to start off with Dressrosa is because I feel like Oda really wanted Luffy and Zoro, the monster trio, to be highlighted, rather than Zoro and Sanji and Luffy all together. He highlighted more so Luffy and Zoro when it comes to, of course, Luffy finding the main antagonist, which is Doflamingo. Luffy's the main character. He's always going to be highlighted in most of these arcs. To Zoro going and pretty much blocking a Admiral attack when it comes to Fujitora. Yes, he struggled a little bit. It wasn't like the same level of Sanji doing against Kizaru, but still, Zoro able to do that during Dressrosa. The power level he had in Dressrosa, for him to do that is insane. Also, the fact that he was able to Haki up, first try to use Armin Haki other than Luffy, and cut Pika's, like his hand. Pika's hand was the size of a city. So Zoro had an amazing feat, and then cutting through full body Armin Haki of Pika. Like, you have to give respect to respect is due. Zoro was doing his work. So Luffy and Zoro, both of them Gear 4th, and Zoro's Haki was definitely the highlight of Dressrosa. Then, of course, we moved on to Whole Cake Island, which was, of course, it was Luffy and Sanji. Luffy, of course, fighting the main antagonist in Katakuri, who knew Awakening, Conqueror's Haki, and, of course, Observation Haki on steroids with Future Sight. And then, of course, we had Sanji, who pretty much had that crazy moment of fighting his own captain and then crying right after. To, of course, Sanji, of course, feeding Big Mom, and with that cake that's pretty much stopped her rampage. Or Sanji, when Luffy was starving, Sanji came back and fed him. So definitely want to say Sanji was really showcasing his cooking skills. And he had a couple cool moments against Oven, of course, and Daifuku. And I just thought that Sanji with his speed blitzing and whatnot, but it wasn't really a fighting arc that was highlighted in this. It's more so Sanji's flashback when it comes to the Vince Smokes and Germa and all that stuff. Then we got to Wano, where, of course, Luffy was going up against the main antagonist in Kaido. You're going to start to notice a trend here. And Zoro, wow, did Zoro not go crazy when it comes to the rooftop? In the beginning of the rooftop, Zoro was the most impressive. I'll be honest with you guys. Zoro was able to block for a little bit Big Mom and Kaido. Guys, he's able to block Big Mom and Kaido just for a little bit. Two Yonkos combined attack and named attack. And then Zoro, of course, able to, of course, slash Kaido's scales. And then, of course, later on, Zoro was able to, of course, cut Kaido and scar him with, of course, most of his bones in his body broken. This was a statement by law. Now, I do want to say this, Zoro also went against King, a Lunarian special race, and that's based on the Seraphims, and we've seen how crazy durable they are. So Zoro against him, and Zoro unlocking Kankozaki coding. Now, of course, I do want to say this. The reason why it's so hype is because Luffy unlocked Kankozaki coding. You would think it would be only Luffy, but the fact that Zoro was able to do it too, which is insane. Is Luffy, of course, he had his awakening gear 5th that made him Yonko level and defeat Kaido. He had to combine with his Kankozaki coding and combining with his advanced armor haki they learned in Prison of Udon. Luffy was doing his thing. Now, don't get me wrong, Sanji did have cool moments in Wano, of course, going up against Queen and, of course, unlocking his Germa abilities. And Sanji did his thing with, of course, the blue flames and his speed that was pretty much, Queen couldn't even see his eye, like couldn't see him. I mean, that's how fast Sanji was moving. But I do want to say this, it was a Luffy Zoro arc, which is, granted, it's a samurai arc. Zoro was going to get hype in this arc with, of course, Kozuki Oden's sword, Enma. But now, seemingly, it looks like the tides have turned back to Luffy and Sanji. And the reason why I say this is because Luffy, of course, is fighting, and if anything, you could say multiple main antagonists when it comes to Kizaru and Saturn, and he even went up against Rob Lucci in the beginning. So Luffy has been doing his thing in Egghead Island as a Yonko, which he should, honestly. And then, of course, we had Sanji, who, let's be honest here, blocking an attack from Saturn in this arc, blocking an attack from Kizaru. These are like Gorosei and Admiral. These are some of the top tiers in the One Piece story when it comes to power scaling, and Sanji is doing his thing. Plus, moving so fast to protect some of the weaker characters in this arc, so going up against Seraphim Jinbei and tanking an attack. I know the anime is doing some, like, I saw the preview recently, so I'm not too sure what's going to go on with that. But Sanji in the manga tanked that attack by Seraphim Jinbei. But I do want to say this. Now in Egghead Island, Zoro is kind of lacking when he's, of course, not being able to defeat Lucci still. And he's still fighting Lucci, and Jinbei has to help him. Am I saying Zoro cannot defeat Lucci? No. I'm just saying that Sanji and Luffy seemingly are getting more highlight in, of course, Egghead Island. Now, people might say, whoa, Sanji got low diffed by Saturn earlier. I'll tell you guys right now, Saturn was doing that head tap Jujutsu, and Saturn, of course, was able to keep him down for some strange powers. Saturn has some hacks, OP abilities that I just don't understand yet, so I'm going to give Sanji benefit of the doubt. The fact that he wasn't knocked out, I will give some respect to Sanji there. Now, going off this trend, we're most likely to see, of course, that Luffy is going to be, of course, going up against the main antagonist in Elbaf, getting highlight there, of course, and then Zoro probably will get a big shine in Elbaf as well. But honestly, Zoro, it might not be Zoro or Sanji in Elbaf. Oda could do a whole plot twist and start the Monster 4 bandwagon that we've been waiting since Arlong Park, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, with that Arlong Park walk. And we could see Usopp and Luffy get the highlight in Elbaf, leading up to, of course, something big. Yep, that's right, the final arc, in which I believe Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji will all be highlighted in this arc for the first time in the One Piece story. And you can even add, of course, Usopp to make it a Monster 4. Now, some people say, what about the Monster 5 and Jinbei? Maybe Yamato joins later in Monster 6. All I'm saying is that right now, let's take it easy a little bit, and let's do the original monsters that saved Nami during Arlong Park. I think that would be very cool for the final arc in the end of the One Piece story. Now, I must admit, if we were actually going to highlight the monster trio recently, you have to admit, Luffy is the most impressive. The fact that he was dog walking Lucci with no Kankozaki coding, just his awakening, and Lucci almost was pretty much losing his consciousness at the last attack that Luffy did, says a lot about Luffy's power and ability. Then, of course, we had him doing one punch to Kizaru's skull, to his dome, and having Kizaru not being able to move for a little bit. One gear fifth punch, doing that to an Admiral, and he couldn't move for a little bit. And Saturn even gave him the benefit of the doubt, saying, yeah, I know why. Because looking at Nika, Saturn knows how powerful Luffy and his awakening is, and this is just another W for the Yonko. And now, of course, he just sent Saturn flying. If you think about that, he just sent Saturn flying. Mind you, we've seen that Kuma attack he did to Saturn, and Saturn, of course, was scaring us with his regeneration and able to paralyze characters like Sanji and many more mysterious powers. So to see Luffy do that was cool, and awaken mythical zone of the Gorosei that even had Katarina impressed, Katarina Devon. I have to admit, this was cool by Luffy. Now, of course, when you look at Sanji, like I said, was tanking a full-fledged Jinbei Seraphim punch. Sanji, of course, then went on to get head tapped and was not able to move by Saturn, which was kind of iffy, but Saturn is a top tier, so I will give respect there. And then, of course, Sanji redeemed himself by blocking an attack by Saturn. And now just recently blocked an attack from Kizaru. Honestly, it surprised him. It was kind of like the Ben Beckman moment on steroids because Sanji actually blocked the attack. And I did always say that Mihawk is the Zoro and Ben Beckman might be the Sanji when it comes to the Red Hair Pirates' final war. Mihawk might join that war. Now, of course, Mihawk's part of the cross skill, so I don't know how that's all going to play out. But I do want to say this. Sanji is a smoker. Ben Beckman's a smoker. And of course, Sanji talks shit after, and just like Ben Beckman, this is Sanji's best feat in this series, honestly, guys. Blocking an animal's attack, and not just any animal, Kizaru's light speed attack, like it went beyond physics. And like I said about Zoro, Zoro had moments fighting, of course, the Mihawk Seraphim and scaring it, which was pretty cool. Zoro was also bodying the awakened Kaku with ease, and now Zoro's fighting an awakened Rob Lucci, who we know, let's be honest here, this is a way harder fight for Zoro than Luffy, showing the gap between these characters. But you have to understand, it's still a W for Zoro because Luffy went extreme different Lucci pre-time skip. So if Zoro beats Lucci post-time skip, just shows you how strong he's gotten, because Zoro would have died during Enies lobby. So it's kind of like a pride thing. Now I do want to say this, Sanji is fighting Kizaru while Zoro's fighting, of course, Lucci. And people might make comments on that. But I do want to say this, Luffy did say, like, let's be honest here, Zoro did say Luffy should take care of Kizaru. And if Sanji takes care of Kizaru, that will definitely make Zoro look a little iffy, which is very interesting. All I'm saying is now, Oda is now implementing the final hype of Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, where every little moment between these characters, look at the fan base on Twitter and the YouTube comments, any little moment between these three characters have every chapter, has everybody in an uproar. Luffy, Zoro, Sanji are on that level where everything is being analyzed. That's how powerful they are. They are at the top tier in the end of the story. So don't be surprised to see more Luffy, Sanji hype coming in Egghead Island. And I just can't wait to see more hype in general, because One Piece has been on fire in this arc. And if it's on fire in Egghead Island, imagine what's going to happen after Egghead Island. Elbaf, and then the final war. And we're seeing Blackbeard in the anime and how they're animating him. Guys, I'm telling you guys right now, Monster Trio hype is just the start of it. There's going to be some crazy stuff at the end of the story.